So the Bricks Beta 2.1 was released today, and one of the key new features that I think is definitely worth checking out in its own dedicated video is the create and update posts via front-end forms. This expands what you can do with the native forms inside Bricks and opens up some additional actions. This means we don't have to rely upon third-party sort of form plugins to be able to add content on the front end of our website without the need to log into the dashboard. Pretty cool if you want to do lots of different things. Lots of videos on the channel about how you can actually achieve this. There is currently one limitation, which I'll come on to when we get to the update post. I've spoken to Thomas about this and expressed what I think would be the better way of working. Hopefully they'll take that on board and maybe change things before the final release comes out. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, let's take a quick look. So I created a page and we're going to use this as our kind of adding new content form. I'm going to focus specifically on just adding in a normal WordPress post. I've added an additional ACF meta field in there to demonstrate how that would work. And it'll give you an idea of how things kind of function inside you. Once this is released, I will be digging into it in a lot deeper and taking a look at some of the other options that are available. So what we're going to do is we're going to select our container. We're going to simply come over and search for forms. We'll add in the standard form in Bricks. And as you can see, it pulls in our normal native kind of form fields. So what we can do here is we can remove these and replace these with the form fields that we want to insert into a traditional WordPress post. And if you create custom post types and you add in custom sort of meta fields and so on, you can reference those inside here as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this email, get rid of this message, and we're going to start off simply with a name and we'll replace this. We'll keep it as text. We'll change it to post title. We'll grab that label and copy it and pop that in the placeholder as well. Now, obviously, you can style all the different parts of your form inside Bricks. I'm not going to cover that because it's exactly the same as what you've been used to since we've had forms in Bricks. So we'll just minimize this. So now let's add our next field in, and this is going to be the field for the content of our post. So we'll add our field, we'll change the type from text to a new form field that we've got, and that is rich text. As its name suggests, it allows us to add in more rich text content. So things like headings, sort of paragraphs, we've got adding media in, we can style things, we can add links in here, all those kinds of cool things. So this is using Tiny MCE5, so it gives us more control over what we want to do. So we can add in things like paragraphs and inline and headings and blocks and all those kinds of cool things. We can add media inside here. So you've got a lot more control over how the content is going to be inserted. So we'll change this label from name to post content. We'll remove the placeholder. We don't need that in there. We just leave it as an empty field. I think it makes more sense. Obviously, if you come down underneath, you can customize aspects of this. So for example, you can choose the menu bar and you can have things like file, edit, and so on. So if you want to open up more options again, you can do. We'll disable that for now. The status bar will add a little bar at the bottom so you can see as you add things in and select things, it'll show you what sort of HTML tag is associated with it and so on. Can be useful. We'll just turn that off for now. And then you can set whether the toolbar is sticky, highlight on focus, toolbar position. You can change the skin. So if you want to go light or dark, so if you're working on a dark design, you can create a dark layout. We're going to light. You can choose light. Then you've got your content area. So again, you can change the look of this. You can say dark inside there if you want to. You get the idea. It's easy to customize the look and feel. Then you've got your image file type. So you can choose what file types are allowed to be uploaded when you choose the add media option. I'll leave that as it is, but all you need to do is pop in the name of the file type. So for example, JPEGs, PNGs and so on, and just separate with a comma. You can see there's a bunch of already ones inside here, and you can set the height and the width of the overall area. So a lot more options there than what we had previously. So that's pretty cool to see. Close that one down. Add the next field. This is going to be another new field, which is the image media library. So this allows us to upload images and choose them from the media library. So this kind of leads me on to the first thing that I'm not that fussed on with the way this is being implemented in the beta version. Hopefully this will be changed, but we'll have to wait and see. And that is that we choose the media library to add a featured image in, which means that you can access the media library and all the files that are inside there to select or upload a featured image. That's fine if you're the admin of the website. You can have access to everything. But if you're just a contributor or you're an author or something like that, and you still have access to all of those files, to me, that's not the best way of operating. I would much rather see that when you choose to upload a file, you upload it to the post that you create or edit, and that's all the access you have. If we can have an option to control that, even better, so you can choose between using the media library or a really sort of just upload your file, job done, nothing more can be done. Just want to make you aware of that. The label, you can see we've got name, which obviously that makes no sense. So we'll say featured image. Placeholder is what you're going to see inside the button itself. So we'll change that for featured image as well. There we go. Makes a bit more sense. We leave everything else as it is. You can make this required if you want to. So all the usual things you'd expect. We don't need to insert things like values and so on. We can leave all that as it is. So after the featured image, what else do we have? Well, we've got things like taxonomies. So what we can do here is we can add a field. We'll set this to be whatever we want, from like a checkbox, select, radio. It's up to you how you want to handle this. I'm going to use the option for a select. It's a nice, easy way of doing it, but you could obviously use other options if you want to. So say, for example, you prefer to use the option for a checkbox. You can do that. I'm going to set this back to be a select field. Now change the name of this, set this to be category. The placeholder will just pop in there, please select. Now, you're not seeing anything at the moment because, well, we haven't really done anything at all where the data and the values are coming from. And normally when you're working with a sort of select field or a radio field inside the forms, you come down and you add your options one per line. And you're already thinking, well, I just use the dynamic data and I set the option inside here to work with the terms. And we just choose from here the terms, for example, post terms category. You will be wrong. We don't actually put anything inside here. We leave everything else as it is, and I'll show you how we address that in a moment. So category is fine. We'll add another field in and change this one over to radio. Change the name of this to tags, placeholder, tags again. And again, we'll leave everything else as it is. We're not going to touch anything inside there. And finally, we've got an ACF field. It's a nothing field. It's just there to demonstrate how it works. So I'm going to add a field in. We'll change this, we set this to text. We're going to change this to ACF field. Placeholder will do the same. There we go. So we've got an ACF field at the bottom, and that's it. So again, we're not going to set any values inside here. We leave everything as it is. So there's the first part done. Let's save this now to make sure we commit those changes. And now we need to go and set the action up, and we need to map everything out to connect everything, all the bits and pieces together. So we're going to come down and to get the actions. And from there, we're going to get rid of email. I'm going to change this over now, and we're going to use the new create post. And you can see underneath, we've got the update post. So we'll look at that in a moment. Choose create post. You can set whatever message you want inside here. Obviously, you're going to make something a bit more logical. Post submitted, for example. And then we're going to come down and we've got the post type, which is the first thing we can set up. So if we drop this down, you can see we've got posts and pages and so on, the normal default WordPress post types. If you create custom post types using MetaBox or ACF, they'll be listed here as well. And that's one of the first things worth noting here is that this form natively supports, straight out of the box, ACF and MetaBox. You can use it, I understand, with other sort of tools allow you to create custom post types and so on, but there's a bit more manual work involved in that, whereas ACF and MetaBox are kind of integrated nicely into it. So we're going to choose the option for post. That then opens up an error message. We'll pop an error message inside there. And then we've got the field mapping. And now you can see this is automatically pulled up post title, content, excerpt, featured image, post status, and post meta and taxonomies. So let's go and handle the mapping. Post title, post title. Post content, post content. These are just the names that we gave the fields inside the form. So this is why it's handy to name things logically, and then mapping them becomes super easy. So post excerpt, we didn't set one, so we can ignore it. And if you ignore it, nothing will happen. Set featured image, post status. We can choose from any of the post status options inside here. We're going to set this to be pending. Then we've got our post meta. So from here now we can set up the post meta fields we've got created with either ACF or MetaBox and so on. So let's open this up and say add item. So the first thing is the meta key. So all we need to do is click on a little lightning bolt for our dynamic data. Scroll down to the bottom, you'll see there's ACF, there's our sample field, the only ACF field I've created. If you're using MetaBox, it'll be the same kind of thing, just under MetaBox, not under ACF. Select the meta value, which is the name of the field that we've created to map this to, which is ACF field. And then you've got your sanitization options or method. If you're using ACF or MetaBox, they handle sanitization themselves. It's internal, you don't need to worry about it. If you're using something else, you will need to choose one of these options if you want to sanitize the data that's being pulled in from your form. And you can see there's a range of options there that you can choose from. So like I said, we're using ACF, so we don't need to worry about that. So that's the only ACF meta field I've created. If you'd added more, you simply keep on doing the same thing, adding items, mapping them to the form fields. Simple as that. So the taxonomies come in. So now we've got two taxonomies. We've got the category for our post type, and we've also got tags. So all we need to do is click on taxonomies, and we do the same thing again. What taxonomy do we want to reference? So let's come down and choose our categories. What field are we going to map this to? Well, we're going to map that to category. Simple as that. And there you go. That pulls our categories into our select field. Simple. Going to come down and add another one in. So we'll open this option up and we're going to say taxonomy. This is going to be tags. And we're going to map this to our tags field. There we go. There's our tags. So now all of our data has been mapped. If we expand this, you can see there's all our different taxonomies. Underneath them, we've got all of our different tags that we've got created. Simple as that. So now we have our create post form created and everything set up. So we can hit save on here. Let's now go and preview this. And you see there's our form. Let's go and add something in. Set a featured image. So you can see what I mean. Like, this gives us access now to the media library. So you can upload. I just prefer this not to be the case. Personal preference, maybe from a security point of view, maybe like I say, this check's in place and I can see this because I'm an admin and logged into everything. I will need to check that in a bit more detail. Let's choose this image and we'll click on select. Then we'll select our category. We'll say this one and we'll choose one of our tags. And underneath, there's our ACF field. Add our content in. Send. You can relabel the button to submit content. You know, it's there for you. Hit send. There you go. Post submitted. You could then redirect this back to a different page, like a listing page or something like that. I haven't set that up inside just, so it just refreshes the form after we've had the content submitted. And there we go. There's our test post submission set as pending. If we open this up and take a look, you can see there's all our content. Come down to our categories. That's been added in. Same with our tags. So everything is set up, working fine. So that's how you kind of go through the whole process of creating one. Let's take a look now at how you'd update one. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to simply copy the form we've created because other than the action, everything else is basically exactly the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this form. And now we're going to come over, and this is where I'm going to lead you to the thing that I'm not the biggest fan of because I think this is kind of limited in how it works. So we're going to come over into our bricks template, and we're going to open up our single post template in bricks. So this is the single post template, the typical template that you have that'll show the content of a post. But we've got to use the link that'll take us over to that particular template page to pre-fill out the content of our form. Now, I'll show you how this works in a moment, but let me quickly tell you how all the other tools that I've used actually work. They'll use the post ID, we'll send that via the URL, and then that will pre-populate the form based upon the ID it passes over. So if your post ID was 1, it would pass it over to your next page, your form would be there, you'd have a hidden field in there that says, this is the ID that's been passed over via that URL, fill out all of the form based upon post 1's information, so title, description, featured image, and so on. This doesn't work in the same way currently. This is what I've expressed to Thomas, so hopefully, like I say, they'll take this on board and modify it. Because what you have to do is we use the standard post link, which is our dynamic data. Again, I'll show you that when we create a listing page to kind of link through to this. But that just takes us over. We have no control over that. So the way Thomas has done it in his video is that you have the post content and then underneath you have the edit form. I don't think that's the most flexible way of working personally. I would like to see it done, like I say, by passing the URL parameter over, pre-filtering the information from your database, and then populating the form from there. Hopefully that option will be added in. Otherwise, I think it seriously restricts what you can do here. If I'm talking rubbish and you think there's a better way of doing it, let me know in the comment section down below. I welcome your feedback just as much as anybody else's. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's add in a new section, and inside there we're going to drop in our form, so we'll just paste that in. We'll say yep, we'll allow that. So there's our form, so everything has been pre-filled out, so all of our fields and everything are fine. Let's come down though, let's change our action. I'm going to get rid of the create post and we're going to choose the option to update post. Okay, so now you'll see there's the update post, and this works in fundamentally the same way, but this updates the content as opposed to inserts it. So post title, we're just going to map these out again. So post title, post content, we didn't do an excerpt, featured image, we'll select it. Post status, you can change the post status here, but what I would recommend is leave this as it is, and you see current is set by default. So whatever the post status is when you pull it in to edit it, that's the way it will stay. Then your post meta, so the first thing you'll do on here is link up our ACF field. So like we did before, ACF, sample field, choose the field we want to map it to, ACF field, job done. Add our taxonomies for our tags and our categories. So like we did, categories post, connect this up to our post categories, and then add one more in, and this is going to be our tags, and we'll select tags from the list. So everything else is exactly the same. So what we're saying here is that we want to update. So you can see post to update. You can leave this select post or page, and that'll kind of use it dynamically. If you want to set this to a specific post or page, you can do inside here. I'm kind of not too sure that I see the benefit of having this where you can select a specific page, but again, I could be talking rubbish on how this works. Let's just leave that as it is. And you'll notice it says the form is not rendered if the current user is lacking the required capability. So in other words, this form won't show up unless you have the right credentials to be able to access the content here. So what we're at it inside here, let's come into our section and just give us a little bit of space on here so it doesn't look quite so ugly. So we'll come into our margins, link the two. So we've got a bit of space at the top and bottom. Okay, so let's save this. And obviously if we preview this, and see there's the form, it's got the sample post data for the content, title and everything. That's because underneath the template settings under the option for populate content, that's what I've selected. So we've got content inside the editor to see what's going on. Okay, so let's hit save on here. Let's come back out, go to our normal pages. So I'll create a page called list posts. We'll edit this with bricks. So this is just a list of our posts. So let's create the link. So like I say, we come in here, we choose the option for dynamic data, choose the option from here, open up posts, and we say post URL. That's the only way from what Thomas said that we can actually do this right now. So let's save this and preview it. So you'll find now if we go to that page, you can see there's our optional eco-centric application. Come back out, go to this one. So you can see it's putting the relevant data in for us. But this is the single post template, not a template specific to working with just the front end forms. So for example, if we use a template, so we'll come over into our templates, we'll use the new wireframes option and we'll do a search for single. From there, you can see there's our single post type. So let's just grab one of these. Doesn't matter too much which one we choose. Let's say this one, we'll insert it. We'll pop that at the top. Now also you've got to map the data here. So let's say, for example, we'll just keep it really super simple. Choose the heading and we'll just remove that from there. We'll link that up to the dynamic data, so our post, so post title. And we'll just do one more thing so you can see. Media, we'll just delete that from there. Choose our dynamic data and we'll choose the option for our featured image. There we go, and hit save. So let's refresh this, and you'll see if we take a look at the sample posts one, there's the dynamic data being pulled in. If we scroll down, there's our form. Now, obviously, you could use conditions to show and hide this and make this available to the sort of admin or something like that using conditions, and you can check those things. I just don't think that's particularly efficient in how you'd work. I like to keep my front-end dashboard controls and the pages and everything else to do with that completely separate to the rest of my site. I don't want those templates becoming lumped into one. I think it's kind of inefficient how you'd work. Hopefully this will be addressed. Hopefully they will take on board that it makes more sense to have that ID being passed and you have dedicated templates or files and pages just to be able to handle the updating of the content. Time will tell. Anyway, that's how you use the insert and update content inside the new Bricks Beta 2.1. What are your thoughts on this right now? Can you see yourself replacing any other plugins that you use to handle this kind of thing? If not, let me know in the comment section down below. As always, all applicable links for everything covered are in the description down below. My name is Paul C. This is WPTuts, and until next time, take care.